Is your fountain pen scratchy, inconsistent, or just not writing the way you'd like? In this video, we'll go over some of the most common fountain pen problems and show you how to solve them. First, let's look at the anatomy of a nib. The tip is the part of the nib that touches the writing surface. The slit divides the nib into two halves, and each side is a tine. Most nibs have a circular breather hole in the center of the nib. The piece of plastic that the nib rests on is called the feed. A channel on the top of the feed brings ink to the tip of the nib. Nibs are carefully engineered, and even the slightest adjustment can have significant and permanent results. When fixing your nibs, be sure to work slowly and test often. Note that using these techniques may void any manufacturer's warranty the pen has. We recommend using the following tools to make troubleshooting your nibs easier. Many nib issues are not visible to the naked eye. Use a loupe or magnifying glass with at least 10x magnification to carefully examine a nib. A grip or thin towel makes it easier and more comfortable to hold a nib. Rubber jar grips and cleaning cloths for glasses are both suitable. A scratchy nib will dig into the paper as you write. Scratchiness is usually caused by misaligned tines or other imperfections at the tip of the nib. Improperly aligned tines can cause scratchiness. The most common form of misaligned tines is when one tine is higher or lower than the other. To correct this issue, follow these steps. With a fingertip placed on top of the nib, press the tip of the nib down gently but firmly against a hard surface. Rock the nib from side to side for 5 to 10 seconds. Check the nib to see if the tines are still misaligned. If so, repeat this step as necessary. Once the tines are aligned, you may notice that the tips have been bent up slightly. Turn the nib over and with a fingertip on the underside of the feed, press down several times in a row. If the tips are still bent, repeat this step. If the tines are properly aligned but the nib is still scratchy, use a magnifier to examine the tip of the nib for these two uncommon but serious issues: asymmetrical tines and damaged tips. Asymmetrical tines have one side that is longer or shorter than the other. Damaged tips have surface irregularities like pits or scratches. These issues are harder to fix at home on your own. Scratchiness can also occur if the surface of the tip is too rough, or if the inside edges of the tip are too sharp. You can try to make the nib smoother by lightly polishing it. This is the last step you should take after checking the tines, as it can make misaligned tines or damaged tips worse. One polishing technique that is relatively safe is to use a paper bag, like the one you would receive from a grocery store. With ink installed in the pen, draw 10 to 20 figure eights on the paper using your normal writing angle and pressure. Test the pen for smoothness on regular paper. If the nib is still scratchy, repeat this step. This method can take a little time to produce noticeable results, and might not work with all nibs. If you find that the nib is cutting into the paper bag, stop immediately. The nib is likely too scratchy to fix, and the paper fibers might just clog up the nib. Flow is how quickly a pen puts ink onto the paper. Dry or inconsistent flow can cause the ink to skip or appear washed out. It can also cause hard starts or small skips at the beginning of pen strokes. Before you try to diagnose the issue, give your pen a good cleaning. Paper fibers and dried ink can clog a pen, causing poor ink flow. Click the card above to watch our video on cleaning fountain pens. If your nib still does not flow well, try these steps. First, check to make sure that the nib and feed are installed properly in the pen. The nib slit should line up with the ink channel on the top, which is visible through the nib's breather hole. If the slit and ink channel do not line up, manually adjust the nib and feed so that they do. Next, see if the nib is setting firmly against the entire top surface of the feed. If there's a gap between the nib and the feed, you can correct it with the following steps. Place a fingertip on the underside of the feed. Press the top of the nib gently but firmly against the edge of a hard surface. Then slowly roll the nib from base to tip against the surface. Check the nib to see if the gap is still present. If so, repeat this step. When the nib and feed are aligned, you may notice that the tips have bent down slightly. Turn the nib over and with a fingertip on the top of the nib, press down briefly several times in a row. If the tips are still bent, repeat this step. With a clean, dry pen, hold the nib up so that light shines through the slit. Use a magnifier to examine the nib. The slit should narrow slightly towards the tip, but the tines should not be touching. Touching or splayed tines can cause poor or inconsistent flow. If the tines are touching, slowly press the tip of the nib down on a hard surface so that the tines of the nib spread no more than 1 or 2 millimeters apart. Hold down for a few seconds and release. Check the nib to see if the tines are still touching. If so, repeat this step. This process can take some time, but most tines should loosen eventually. Do not try to speed up this process by pressing harder or for longer periods, as this can result in splayed tines or even permanent damage. If the tines are splayed, roll the top of the nib on the edge of a hard surface. Next, with a fingertip on the underside of the feed, press the top side of the tip against a hard surface and rock the nib from side to side for 5 to 10 seconds. Repeat this step as needed. With a fingertip on the side of one tine, press the tip of the other tine down on a hard surface and hold for several seconds. Alternate sides and repeat as needed. Grip the sides of the tines between 2 fingertips and squeeze them firmly for 5 to 10 seconds, repeating as necessary. This can be uncomfortable, so we recommend using a jar grip or thin towel to cushion your fingertips. If your fountain pen skips on the first pen stroke after a brief pause, but writes well otherwise, the problem could be baby's bottom. The following workarounds won't solve the problem, but they will alleviate the symptoms. Press a little harder while you're writing. Use paper that is less smooth and more absorbent. Or use a wetter ink. Some of our favorites are Diamine, Pilot Iroshizuku, or Waterman. A pen with wet flow will create wide, wet lines that can make your nib seem broader and take a long time to dry. It might even cause ink to drip or leak from your nib. Here are steps you can take to address a nib with excessive ink flow. Heat, like warm weather or your body temperature, can cause the air inside a pen to expand and force ink out of the feed. Eyedropper-filled pens are the most prone to this issue, but it can affect any fountain pen regardless of filling system. One way to alleviate the problem, particularly with eyedroppered fountain pens, is to keep the reservoir at least a third full of ink at all times. More ink in the barrel means there is less air that can expand. If you're writing during hot weather, maybe take a break or go somewhere with air conditioning. An air leak might occur when the opening of an ink cartridge or converter does not form an airtight seal with the nib section. Make sure the cartridge or converter is installed firmly, and if that doesn't work, try installing a different cartridge or converter in the pen. You can try to reduce ink flow by tightening the gap between the nib's tines. Grip the sides of the tines with your fingertips and squeeze them for 5 to 10 seconds, repeating as needed. Use a rubber grip or a soft cloth to cushion your fingers. With a little work and some inky fingers, you can fix or tune a fountain pen to write the way that you want. Did this video help you solve your fountain pen problem? Let us know in the comments below. Hopefully we've talked about any issues that you might run into, but the most important tip we can give is not to fix a pen that isn't broken. If your pen has a nib slit that isn't perfectly aligned, or the tines aren't perfectly cut, but it still writes well, then it doesn't need to be adjusted. Thanks for watching!